I'm W. Rodriguez, and this is The Art of R. Today I'm going to be doing the second video in my Adam Reviews Books About Werewolves series. And this book for this particular episode is this one right here, The Wolf Leader by Alexandre Dumas. If the name Alexandre Dumas rings a bell, that is because he is the guy who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo and The Three Musketeers. This, The Wolf Leader, is one of very few fantasy books ever written by Alexandre Dumas. He was actually quite prolific. He did several books. In fact, most of his bibliography was historical fiction. He wrote a lot of nonfiction, and then he wrote 3 fantasy-style books. And even 2 of those 3 were kind of horror adjacent. One was called The Pale Lady, and it was a vampire-style book. And the other one was this, The Wolf Leader, which is a werewolf book. The story in this book is based off of some very regional folklore that Alexandre Dumas grew up with. And so I thought that was pretty fascinating, that there was just some old werewolf lore, French werewolf lore, that Alexandre Dumas, used as the basis for this particular book. This book has been criticized as being one of his more drab and hack pieces of literature, but it's also been called like a formidable werewolf book, especially for its time. I wanted to read some werewolf literature that was like older, closer to back when Bram Stoker's Dracula released, closer to when Frankenstein was released. This one was released in 1857. And it's set in the 1700s, like many of Alexandre Dumas' books. It follows a character named Thibault. Thibault is a shoemaker who does have a history as a soldier. He knows his way around handheld weapons. A spear comes up often in the book itself. He's an angry man. He's a spiteful man. He has an encounter with a character called Lord Vez, who is this local lord who is going out on these hunts. He encounters Thibault at his shop and then ends up abusing him. His guards beat him and stuff like that. And then he seeks retribution and puts himself in danger to do so. So Thibault is eventually encounters this creature where it is a black wolf that walks on its hind legs like a person, and he ends up making this pact with this particular wolf. So back in the old days, werewolf lore was mostly about people making pacts with dark spirits or demons and devils and stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily the whole bite a guy, wait for the next full moon, and then that guy turns into a werewolf kind of narrative. Those came later. So this was like some of the earlier werewolf lore. There was another book that I almost picked up instead of this one, and it was called Wagner, the Werewolf. And it was written as a penny dreadful, and I figured it was going to be one of the two. I ended up picking The Wolf Leader, mostly because it was written by Alexandre Dumas. What I did was I Googled like old werewolf books, and those are the 2 books that came up predominantly. Wagner the Werewolf and The Wolf Leader. I have talked to a couple of people who have read Wagner the Werewolf and said that it was cool, but that's about it. Nobody really raved about it. This particular book definitely has trouble in its narrative. I think that there are parts where he's trying to like kind of create some sort of historic fiction, and then the narrative style changes to more of a like fairy tale style. And because it couldn't make up its mind, or at least in my reading experience, it felt like there was no real whole narrative style. I think it kind of threw me off a little bit, and I think it's what kind of knocked a few points off of it. All in all, I really like the idea. The book itself has got a character with these gray morals, and he gets more and more despicable as the story progresses, especially after he makes this pact with this devil and starts to have these strange powers and this strange kind of influence over the world and the wolves. And in fact, he starts to be surrounded by wolves when he walks through the woods. He develops this reputation, and all the townsfolk begin to accuse him of being a werewolf. The actual werewolfing of the character of Thibault is a very slow process, and intermediately with short story, kind of episodic almost in a way, but it really wasn't. I mean, it's a whole book. It's super, super short. It's barely 250 something pages. I mean, most of the books that I've seen by Dumas tend to be pretty lengthy, so I like the idea also of having some of a shorter piece of fiction by Alexandre Dumas in my repertoire. This is the second book in my Adam Reviews Books About Werewolves series. The next book that I'm probably going to read is either going to be Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones, or it's going to be The Howling by Gary Brander. I'm also looking to reread Cycle of the Werewolf by Stephen King, but I want at least 2 more good werewolf books to read before I've satiated my desire for werewolf literature. If you've got some cool werewolf recommendations, put those in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to learning more about good werewolf literature. So, you know, hey, give me your recommendations. I'm dying for them. Bring them on. Awesome. This particular book gets a 7 out of 10 from me. And it's mostly because that narrative style kind of moves around and it throws me off a little bit. I think I just kind of wanted more terror, and I don't think that's what this book was ever promising. So I really shouldn't count that against this book, but I kind of do. And all in all, I really liked it. I think it's worth reading. It's super cool. I like that it's Dumas. I like the history, and yeah, this was a fine read. I'm glad I read it, and I'm looking forward to moving on to the next werewolf book. Awesome. I think that's about it. Thank you so much for watching this here video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I know I enjoyed making it. We will see you next time here at The Art of R. Ciao.